All right, let's turn our focus today to a truly towering figure in history, Louis XIV, France's Sun King. His reign was remarkably long, 72 years, and it didn't just reshape France, it profoundly impacted, well, pretty much all of Europe.
Absolutely. It's hard to overstate his influence.
We're going to trace his story from a rather surprising childhood right through to his monumental legacy. The aim here is to get under the surface, understand the key moments, and maybe some surprising details that made him who he was.
And Louis XIV really is the poster child for absolutism, isn't he? A monarch whose power radiated outwards, from expanding colonies overseas to setting the absolute standard for arts, architecture, Versailles being the prime example, of course.
Exactly.
So our task really is to explore the events, the decisions that shaped this iconic ruler, and to grasp why his era earned the name the Grand Siècle, the Great Century.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning then. His birth in 1638, it was quite something.
It really was.
His parents, Louis III and Anne of Austria, they'd been married 23 years and had gone through 4 stillbirths. So you can imagine when he arrived, he was dubbed Louis Dieudonné, Louis the God-given.
A miracle baby, essentially.
And apparently he had this incredibly close, affectionate relationship with his mother, Anne. She seems to have instilled in him this powerful belief in, well, the divine right of kings, absolute power.
Which is crucial,
Yeah.
especially considering the political mess he was born into. His father, Louis XIII, didn't entirely trust Anne. On his deathbed, he tried setting up a regency council to limit her power.
But she outmaneuvered that.
Oh, completely. She was very sharp. She got the Parlement de Paris, these are the high courts, remember, with real political teeth to annul her husband's will.
Well-
Just like that, she was sole regent.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating is who she picks as chief minister. Cardinal Mazarin. He basically continued the policies of Cardinal Richelieu, the previous minister, who had actually persecuted Anne.
Talk about complicated loyalties.
It shows her pragmatism, I think. She even kept Chancellor Pierre Séguy in his job. This is the guy who once interrogated her quite harshly, all for the stability of France. Kingdom first, personal feelings second.
That really sets the stage for a complex early life. But while all this is happening inside France, what about the wider world? You mentioned the Peace of Westphalia around 1648. How did that play out for France?
Westphalia, yes, 1648. It ended the 30 Years' War, which had just ravaged Central Europe. And for France, it was a huge win.
How so?
They gained significant territory in Alsace. Their sovereignty over Metz, Verdun, and Toul was confirmed. It really cemented France as, a dominant power on the continent.
So international success, but then almost immediately things fall apart at home, the Fronde.
Exactly. Perfect timing in a way. The Fronde, this series of civil wars between 1648 and 1653, it was a direct backlash against Anne and Mazarin trying to centralize power.
Against the nobility and the parlements.
Precisely. They tried to tax the members of the Parlement de Paris, which, well, didn't go down well. They arrested a popular leader, Pierre Broussel. Paris just erupted in riots.
Must have been terrifying for young Louis.
Imagine. An angry mob actually broke into the royal palace. They demanded to see the king, who was just a boy. The royal family had to flee the city. Twice.
You can see how that would leave a mark. This is where it gets really crucial for understanding the later Louis XIV, isn't it?
Absolutely fundamental.
This chaos, this defiance from nobles and Parisians, it planted this deep seed of distrust in him. Distrust of Paris, distrust of the high aristocracy. You can draw a straight line from these experiences to his later determination to consolidate all power in himself and, crucially, move the court away from Paris.
To Versailles, eventually.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just political drama. Amidst all this, Louis had his first real romance with Mazarin's own niece, Marie Mancini.
But that didn't work out.
No. Anne and Mazarin put a stop to it. Politics trumped love. They needed Louis to marry for strategic reasons, specifically a Spanish princess. That marriage was key to ending the long war with Spain and securing potential future claims to Spanish lands. Duty over desire, a hard lesson early on.
Okay, fast forward a bit. Mazarin dies in 1661. Louis is 22. And he makes this famous declaration.
It is now time that I govern them myself. No more chief minister, he steps up.
And how does he pull it off? France must have been exhausted after all the turmoil.
He absolutely played on that exhaustion. People crave stability, order, and Louis provided it, or at least the image of it. His personal rule was about consolidating power, stamping out the last bits of old feudal independence.
And a big part of that was getting the nobles to Versailles, right?
Exactly. Compelling the high nobility to live at court under his eye. It turned potential troublemakers into, well, courtiers scrambling for his favor, a brilliant, if controlling, move to pacify them.
So, he takes charge. First order of business must have been the money, surely. The treasury was in a terrible state.
Dire straits. Absolutely. He appoints Jean-Baptiste Colbert as Comptroller General of Finances in 65.
Right.
But even before that, he had to deal with the current finance guy, Nicolas Fouquet.
Ah, Fouquet, the one with the incredibly lavish chateau.
Vol-le-Vicomte, yes.
Hmm?
Fouquet was living like a king himself, throwing these unbelievable parties. It was pretty obvious he was lining his pockets with state funds.
And Louis didn't tolerate that.
Not for a second. Fouquet was arrested, tried for embezzlement, and locked up for life. A clear message. There's only one Sun King here.
And that cleared the way for Colbert. What was his strategy?
Colbert was methodical, relentless. He wasn't just trying to balance the books. He was building a whole economic system mercantilism. The idea was to make France economically self-sufficient and powerful.
How did he do that?
Through efficiency, namely. He improved the collection of existing taxes, the aides, the douanes, the gabelle salt tax. He actually managed to reduce the taille, the main direct tax on commoners, yet still increased revenue.
So better collection, not just higher taxes.
Largely, yes. And it worked. By 1666, France actually had a budget surplus. Later on, after 1700, they even started imposing some direct taxes on the nobility, which was a huge step, though always resisted.
And Colbert looked beyond just taxes, didn't he? He wanted to boost French industry.
Oh, massively. He poured state support into creating new industries. Think Lyon silk, Gobelins tapestries. These became world famous. He encouraged manufacturers, even tempted skilled workers from other countries to come to France. The goal was simple. Export more, import less, keep the gold and silver in France.
Makes sense. And while Colbert fixed the economy, what about the military?
Similar reforms happening there, led by Michel Letellier and his son Louvois. They really professionalized the French army.
How so? What changed?
Discipline, organization, logistics. They curbed the independent power of the old noble commanders, the nobility of the sword. The army became more centralized, more loyal directly to the king, essential for his ambitions.
And legal reforms, too. I remember reading about the Code Louis.
Yes, the Grande Ordonnance de Procédure Civile of 1667, a major achievement. Before this, France was a patchwork of different local laws. This code standardized civil procedures across the kingdom. It was so influential, it even shaped the later Napoleonic Code.
But there was also the Code Noir.
Yes, 1685. We have to mention that. It's a darker aspect. It legally sanctioned slavery in the French colonies. While it did contain some articles that, on paper, aimed to provide basic standards for enslaved people, food, clothing, limiting punishments, the reality was often brutal and enforcement weak. It codified a horrific system.
A very mixed legacy there. So France is consolidating power internally, reforming its finances, military laws, and looking outward.
Absolutely. This internal strengthening fueled external ambition. French explorers were claiming vast territories in North America, Louisiana, named after him, of course.
Okay.
Think of Joliet Marquette LaSalle.
Right.
They set up trading posts in India, the Indian Ocean, and diplomacy was global too. Embassies exchanged with the Ottoman Empire, Morocco, Siam, Persia, even Jesuit missions reaching China. It was a truly global vision.
So France, under Louis, becomes this powerhouse. Largest population in Europe, rich, strong army. But that must have made the neighbors nervous.
Extremely nervous. France's sheer size and power meant it often faced coalitions of other states trying to, well, counterbalance its influence. It became a recurring pattern.
Which leads us into his wars. The War of Devolution, that was the first major one.
Correct, 1667-68. Louis claimed the Spanish Netherlands, modern Belgium, roughly, and the justification was fascinatingly technical.
How so?
He used an obscure local inheritance law from Brabant, plus the fact that his Spanish wife's dowry had never been fully paid. Very legalistic aggression. It worked initially, but it scared England, Sweden, and the Dutch Republic into forming the Triple Alliance against him. He had to back down slightly in the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle.
But he didn't give up on the Netherlands. That led to the Franco-Dutch War.
Exactly, 1672-78. This time he really wanted to crush the Dutch Republic, which he saw as a commercial and ideological rival. He even made a secret deal with Charles II of England to isolate the Dutch.
The secret Treaty of Dover.
That's the one. France invaded, but again, other powers got drawn in, forming another anti-French alliance. The Dutch famously opened the dikes to flood the land and halt the French advance.
Did France gain much in the end?
Militarily, France often had the edge. Great generals like Turenne and Condé, better organization. The final Treaty of Nijmegen was generally favorable to France. They kept strategic territories like Franche-Comté. But Louis didn't achieve his main aims. He didn't destroy the Dutch Republic or grab the whole Spanish Netherlands.
After the wars, he kept expanding through, what was it called? The reunion?
Ah, the reunions, yes. This was, again, classic Louis, using legal arguments, often very flimsy ones based on interpretations of old treaties, to annex strategic border territories.
Like Strasbourg.
Strasbourg in 1681 was the big one. Also, Luxembourg, Casale in Italy. He wasn't necessarily declaring war, just taking them, claiming they were historically part of lands ceded to France. It was incredibly provocative.
And combined with other aggressive acts, bombing cities.
Yes, naval bombardments of Algiers, Tripoli, even Genoa to enforce French interests. All this built up a reputation across Europe for French arrogance, hauteur. It further isolated France.
And then amidst all this comes one of his most controversial domestic policies, the Edict of Fontainebleau in 1685.
Revoking the Edict of Nantes. A huge moment. The Edict of Nantes, remember, had granted substantial rights to French Protestants, the Huguenots, back in 1598.
Why revoke it?
Louis wanted religious uniformity. Cuius regio, eius religio, whose realm his religion. He believed, perhaps wrongly, that Protestantism was declining anyway. He saw religious unity as essential for absolute monarchy.
But the methods used were brutal. The Dragonades.
Extremely brutal. The policy involved quartering royal dragoons, soldiers, in Huguenot homes with implicit permission to mistreat the inhabitants until they converted to Catholicism. It was state-sponsored terror, effectively.
What was the result?
Mass conversions under duress, but also a huge exodus. Estimates vary, maybe 200,000. Some say up to 400,000 Huguenots fled France.
And these were often skilled people. Merchants, artisans.
Exactly. Highly skilled workers, entrepreneurs. It was a significant brain drain and economic loss for France, and a gain for countries like England, the Netherlands, Prussia, where they settled.
How was the revocation viewed at the time?
Mixed, but largely negative outside France. Many French Catholics cheered it as a victory for the true faith, but Protestant Europe was outraged. Even Pope Innocent XI, though opposed to Protestantism, condemned the violent methods used. It badly damaged Louis's international standing, though arguably, it did quell religious strife within France for his successors.
All this aggression, the reunions, the revocation, it leads to another major conflict.
Inevitably. The 9 Years' War from 1688 to 1697. It kicked off partly due to succession disputes in the German Rhineland, but really was a reaction to years of Louis's perceived bullying.
And this is where the League of Augsburg comes in.
Yes, initially a defensive alliance against France, but then the Glorious Revolution happened in England in 1688. William III, Louis's archenemy, came to the English throne. England joined the alliance, transforming it into the Grand Alliance. It became France against most of the rest of Europe.
But how did the war go?
France often won battles on land, thanks to generals like Luxembourg, famous victories at Fleurus, Steenkirk, Landen. But these didn't translate into winning the war. It was a long, grinding, expensive conflict. There were atrocities, too, like the French devastation of the Palatinate and the bombardment of Brussels in 1695.
Which destroyed a huge part of the city.
A terrible act. Eventually, everyone was exhausted.
So the Peace of Ryswick in 1697 ends it. What were the terms?
France got to keep Alsace, including Strasbourg, solidifying the Rhine as its border, which was a major strategic gain. It regained some colonies, but Louis had to give back territories like Lorraine and Luxembourg and recognize William III as King of England. Interestingly, he returned Catalonia to Spain. Some historians think this was a calculated move, a bit of generosity to maybe sway Spanish opinion regarding the upcoming succession crisis.
Ah, yes, the Spanish succession. This really dominated the last part of his reign, didn't it?
Absolutely. The War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, it overshadowed everything else.
Set the scene for us. What was the issue?
The King of Spain, Charles II, was childless and in failing health. His empire was vast Spain itself. Territories in Italy, the Spanish Netherlands, and huge colonies in the Americas. Both the French Bourbons, through Louis's wife and mother, and the Austrian Habsburgs had strong claims to inherit it all. Everyone knew his death would trigger a crisis. They even tried negotiating partition treaties beforehand to divide the empire peacefully, but those failed.
Completely. Then, in 1700, Charles II dies, and his will contains a bombshell.
Right. He leaves the entire Spanish Empire undivided to Louis XIV's second grandson, Philip, Duke of Anjou.
On condition it never be united with France.
Exactly. It was influenced by pro-French advisors in Madrid. Even the Pope supposedly favored it to prevent another huge Habsburg bloc. Louis faced a massive dilemma. Accept the will and likely face war, or reject it, stick to the partition treaties, and still likely face war with Austria, who would claim the whole lot.
He chose to accept.
He did. His grandson became Philip V of the Spain. Louis famously declared, "There are no more Pyrenees." Europe was horrified.
And Louis didn't exactly help calm things down, did he?
No, he made several moves that seemed deliberately provocative. He formally confirmed Philip V still had rights to the French throne, potentially uniting the two crowns later. He sent French troops into the Spanish Netherlands. He grabbed the Asiento, the very profitable contract to supply slaves to Spanish America for France.
And the final straw for England?
Recognizing the son of the exiled James II as the rightful King of England, James Stuart, the Old Pretender, after his father died. That was a direct challenge to the Protestant succession in England. All these things guaranteed the formation of another grand alliance against France and Spain.
So, the war begins. How did it unfold?
Initially, France did okay, but then the Allies found two brilliant commanders, John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough for the English and Dutch.
The ancestor of Winston Churchill.
That's him, and Prince Eugene of Savoy for the Austrians. They inflicted a series of devastating defeats on the French. Blenheim in 1704, Ramillies in 1706, Turin also in 1706.
France must have been reeling.
It was catastrophic. The country faced invasion, the treasury was empty again, there was widespread famine due to bad harvests. By 1708-09, Louis was desperate for peace. He was willing to give up almost everything, including the Spanish inheritance for his grandson.
But the Allies pushed too hard.
They demanded Louis actually use the French army to help them drive his own grandson out of Spain. That was a step too far, an insult he couldn't accept, so the war dragged on.
Was there a turning point?
A couple of things shifted the balance. Franco-Spanish forces started winning key battles in Spain, like Villaviciosa in 1710. The French won a crucial victory at Denain in 1712, saving France itself from invasion. But the biggest factor, arguably, was political.
What happened?
In 1711, the Habsburg Emperor Joseph Ier died unexpectedly. His heir was his brother, Archduke Charles, who was the Allies' candidate for the Spanish throne.
Oh. So if Charles became King of Spain and Holy Roman Emperor?
You'd recreate the massive empire of Charles V from the 16th century. Britain and the Netherlands did not want that either. Suddenly, a Bourbon on the throne of Spain seemed the lesser of two evils, as long as the crowns of France and Spain remained separate. The Grand Alliance started to fray.
So that paved the way for peace negotiations.
Exactly. The treaties of Utrecht in 1713 and then Rastatt and Baden in 1714 finally ended the war.
And the outcome?
Philip V, Louis's grandson, kept the throne of Spain and its overseas colonies, but had to renounce any claim to the French throne. Austria got the Spanish Netherlands, which became the Austrian Netherlands, and Spanish territories in Italy. Britain was arguably the biggest winner in strategic terms. They got Gibraltar and Minorca, dominating the Mediterranean entrance, plus vast territories in North America from France, Newfoundland, Acadia, Hudson Bay Territory. France kept its borders. Alsace and Strasbourg were confirmed.
The compromise, really, born of exhaustion. Let's touch on his personal life in these later years. His first wife, Maria Theresa, died quite young.
Yes, back in 1683. They had 6 children, but only one. The eldest son, Louis, known as Le Grand Dauphin, survived into adulthood, and even he died before Louis XIV did.
And Louis secretly remarried.
Yes, probably in late 1683, early 1684, he secretly married Françoise d'Aubigné, the Marquise de Maintenon. She had been the governess to his illegitimate children. She was very devout and is credited with influencing Louis's increasing piety in his later reign. She never became queen publicly, but she had considerable influence behind the scenes.
Despite the image of the Sun King, he had quite a few health problems, didn't he?
Oh, definitely. For all the portraits of robust health, he suffered from a range of ailments. Symptoms that sound like diabetes, recurring fevers, boils, gout, terrible dental problems leading to abscesses.
And that infamous fistula operation.
Ah, yes, the anal fistula in 1686. A major operation performed without effective anesthesia, of course. His stoicism during the procedure became legendary. Honestly, surviving 17th century medicine might have been one of his biggest achievements.
He finally died in 1715.
Yes, from gangrene in his leg on September 1st, 1715, just a few days shy of his 77th birthday. A remarkable 72-year reign. His reported last words were quite fitting. I depart, but the state shall always remain.
But the succession was complicated by then.
Very complicated. Because he lived so long, he outlived his son, the Grand Dauphin, and his eldest grandson, the Duke of Burgundy. So the throne passed to his great-grandson, Louis, Duke of Anjou, who was only 5 years old, the future Louis XV.
And Louis XIV tried to control the regency from beyond the grave.
He did. He distrusted his nephew, Philip, Duke of Orleans, who was the natural regent. Louis's will tried to set up a regency council to limit Orléans' power. But almost immediately after Louis died, Orléans went straight to the Parlement de Paris again and had the will overturned, securing full regency powers for himself.
So looking back at this incredibly long and impactful reign, what's the verdict? What's his legacy?
It's profoundly complex and honestly still debated. Did his deathbed advice to his young successor avoid war, relieve the people ring true after his own reign? Perhaps pious sentiment.
What do his supporters point to?
Military and diplomatic successes of Bourbon did end up on the Spanish throne. France's borders were expanded and mostly secured. The end of the major civil wars that plagued earlier centuries, the centralization of the French state, and of course, the unparalleled flourishing of arts and culture, the Grand Siècle, is named for a reason. French language, manners, architecture, fashion became the standard for elite Europe.
But the critics...
They point to the staggering cost. The endless wars left France bankrupt and exhausted. The revocation of the Edict of Nantes was a self-inflicted wound economically and morally. And crucially, his failure to reform France's archaic financial and social structures. Some argue this failure laid the groundwork, created the pressures that eventually exploded in the French Revolution nearly 75 years after his death.
It's fascinating how contemporaries saw him, too. Saint-Simon, the courtier, famously criticized his vanity and focus on ceremony.
A very sharp, often bitter observer from within the court.
While Voltaire, writing a bit later, really admired the glory and the cultural achievements of the age. Napoleon apparently called him a great king. Leibniz, the philosopher, called him one of the greatest kings that ever was. High praise.
It shows the duality. Was he a great king despite his flaws and the costs? Or were the costs too high for the glory achieved? Modern historians try to balance those perspectives. He was undeniably capable, immensely ambitious, and presided over France's cultural and political apex. But the price paid by the French people was enormous, and the institutional problems were left unsolved.
So a reign of dazzling heights and profound burdens, Louis left his mark, shaping not just France but the course of European history in ways we still feel today.